Hello, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Founders First CDC's How to Get Pitch Perfect webinar with Adam Riggs-Zegan, who is our Head of Member Success and Expansion Advisory. In this online webinar, Adam will unveil the essential elements of delivering an organized pitch that showcases your company's value. If you have any questions, please use the chat and the Q&A boxes for any questions or comments. We will be addressing them at the end. If for some reason you lose connection of the meeting, you can use the same link that you used to log in to join again. But with that being said, Adam, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Bobby. I'll give it just a minute or two to have people continue filling in, if that's all right with you, just to make sure that we give folks enough time to get into the meeting. So we'll just give it maybe another 1 or 2 minutes for everybody to come on in, and then we'll get started. As we do that, it's always fun to see where folks who are in the webinar are from. So in the chat, would love to see folks, if you just say hi, kind of where you're from, and where you're joining us from, that would be great. I see Janine from San Diego. Way to get it started, Janine. I'm going to have to call out Adam Varga. Oh, chat is disabled. Why would chat be disabled? Bobby.
It should be open now. Just open it for everyone.
All right. We have San Antonio, Texas in the house. Welcome. Redlands, Wisconsin, Irvine. Oh, a lot of folks from Texas. The great state of Texas is representing. All the way from Budapest. My man, Adam Varga. Thanks for joining, Adam. California folks. All right, so we're a couple minutes past here, so we'll go ahead and get started. And so as Bobby mentioned, I'm Adam Riggs-Zegan. I'm the head of programs and member success at Founders First. And today I'm going to talk to you about becoming pitch perfect, 5 things you must do to be successful with pitching. From time to time, I'll ask you guys just to make sure that folks on the line are tuned in to just kind of give me a thumbs up there in the chat. We'll start this off right out of the bat. So throw a thumbs up if you're ready to get started with this guy. And yes, the recording will be available. I trust, Bobby. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I'll be sending out an email with it attached as well.
Awesome. All right, we got some thumbs up, so I will get rolling. First and foremost, let me give you a little bit of background about me. I am, while I mentioned, my role here at Founders First, I've had a long career in creating and starting businesses, a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I have had the opportunity to start 4 different companies over the course of my career, in addition to working with companies everywhere from Fortune 200 tech companies down to 5 and 10 person startups. So really run the gamut in my career. I've had the chance to, in the opportunity to have raised some institutional capital in my career. So I've raised money from angels, I've pitched VCs, I've raised it from strategic investors, a couple $1 million over the course of my career. So I've been successful with that. And really where I think I've had some of my best successes at pitch competitions. So I've been lucky enough to win the Tech Coast Angels quick pitch competition. Tech Coast Angels is the largest angel investor groups based here in Southern California. The Plug and Play Startup Pitch Competition, Los Angeles Capital Competition, New York Media Festival Startup Competition, and a few others. Most importantly, though, maybe for this discussion, I've also had a chance to coach those who have been successful at pitch competition. So at Founders First, we host a boot camp pitch competition 3 times a year, and 5 out of the past 6 winners have been companies that I've coached. They've won a combined 25K from those competitions. So while there's always more to learn, and I certainly know there's more to learn, I feel like I have a fairly good background to be able to help educate you guys on how to be successful with your pitches. Speaking of pitches, let's start off with what is a pitch? This is the way I like to describe it. It is the art of trying to get somebody to do something in exchange for something else. Anytime you're pitching, you are have some sort of ask associated with it. You're trying to bring people towards that ask, and invariably you have something that you are offering in return. Effectively, you're trying to get like this with your audience, right? Some sort of handshake, some sort of agreement, something to move forward in a relationship. That's what you are there pitching for. And fair warning, this won't be your typical type of webinar. I do use a lot of GIFs. I use a lot of memes. I try to keep it entertaining, engaging for you guys. So this is just the first of many GIFs and memes you can expect to see. My goal for this webinar, I want to help you guys in whatever type of pitch that you are looking to get better at. Now, there's a whole bunch of different types of pitches out there, right? You have pitch competitions that I mentioned. You may be pitching equity investors for a startup that you have. You may be talking to debt providers. You may be just looking to pitch partners or customers, advisors. I would argue even pitching employees to come on board with your company is a type of pitch. For sake of this webinar, I'm going to focus primarily in these 4 different areas because they do share things in common. But even if you're not considering pitch competitions or equity investment, I think you'll find some value out of this webinar. I'm going to take you through some actionable tips for achieving what you want from a pitch. And I would like to show you some examples of each tip in action. So this isn't just sharing, hey, do this. I'll be sharing with you, here's an example of where I've seen this in the process of either my own pitching or in some of the companies I've coached throughout the years. So these are the 5 tips I'll be going over with you guys today. Tip number 1, we're going to talk about grabbing and holding attention. Tip number 2, we're going to talk about why it's important to explain what you do very simply. Tip number 3, we're going to talk about nailing your traction. Tip number 4, realizing the purpose of your pitch. And tip number 5 is practice. So let's roll right into tip number 1. So in order to be effective with your pitches, the number 1 tip I have for you guys, the number 1 thing that you have to do is be able to grab and hold attention. You have to realize that you are likely pitching somebody who is busy. Like they have other things going on, they have a lot of demands on their time, they sat down, they've given you some time for your pitch, but they are likely busy. And so in order to keep them from, tuning out or getting on their phone during your pitch, which I had the unfortunate experience of during one of my VC pitches. I'm there, I'm ready, I'm excited, I've got my deck up, and 5 minutes in, I fail to set the hook, and the associate's just there on their phone, just kind of scrolling as I'm going through my pitch. And I knew at that point I'd lost them. So I don't want you guys to have that experience. And so we're going to talk through how to go about doing that. But realize that whoever you're pitching is likely very busy. They're likely hearing a lot of pitches, right? So this is especially true in things like pitch competitions, where sometimes you are one of 5, one of 10, maybe even one of 20 companies that will be pitching. And so you have to stand out from the other 19 or 14 or 4 different companies that are up there talking. And so keeping in mind this fact of holding attention, grabbing it, being memorable will be important. Attention spans are short. I'm sure we've all heard that and experienced that ourselves. And so the key is to set the hook from the beginning. Starting off your presentation strong, grabbing that attention and holding it through the beginning part of the presentation is critical. So let's talk about how to do that. Number one, the one that's probably most accessible for entrepreneurs and founders, like most of the folks on here, is simply to be passionate. Tap into that feeling that you have as to why you're doing what you're doing, and let that flow through you. Talk about how excited and passionate and meaningful your business is, the problem that you're solving, why it's important. Letting that come through in how you talk about it, how your body language is, your level of energy is one of the best ways to grab attention. People gravitate towards those who are passionate. Another way to do it is to be funny. I mentioned that I will include GIFs and memes, and I do that just to help to hold your guys' attention. Comedy, when done right, is a great way to grab attention. If you can get somebody you're pitching kind of chuckling or nodding along, they're engaged. And so, it can be hard to be funny. They can certainly backfire, but if you can weave it in, it's a great way to hold attention. This one's not accessible to all of us, but if there's something about you that is incredibly impressive, that is another great way to grab attention. I was in a startup accelerator with a couple of guys who were starting a company, and they were former NASA engineers. So they would start their pitch with like, "Hey, I used to be a NASA engineer," and it's like, "Whoa, that's pretty unique and pretty impressive, right?" So if you have something in your background, something that you've done that places you in the top fraction of % of people, that is a great way to lead off the presentation about you, and will help to hold attention because you've done something that is incredibly rare and that gets people's attention. And finally, to the best of your ability, tell a story with your pitch. Kind of take somebody through a journey of what it's been like, to address the problem that you are solving with your company. And stories are great because they tend to have a hook at the beginning, a little drama or something in the middle, and then a conclusion. And so it really helps to hold people's attention through it. So I don't, as I said at the beginning, just want to give you guys tips for this. I want to take you through some examples. So I'll take you through an example that I used when I was pitching my last company. And just a little taste of especially kind of the story element and really all three of these particular pieces. So to start off this story, I would like to introduce you to somebody. This is me about 11 years old. I was your proverbial chubby kid. I was never thought I would be somebody who is athletic or active. I remember my first freshman year of high school mile time was 14 minutes. Leading an active lifestyle was never something that was for me. I was really into computers. There's a Commodore 64 and a floppy disk for those who remember those, and I probably just dated myself. But fast forward several years, and I go on to be a DJ. So I have the opportunity to work with an agent, play at shows around the country, a bit overseas, and use music to help motivate crowds and drive their energy levels. This was an awesome time, but it was also not a time in which I was particularly healthy. This lifestyle isn't one that lends itself well to being active or being healthy. So, I really went on a downward slide with my health. To help correct that, I decided, like many folks do, that I should sign up for a race. I should run. Now, here's a picture of me at my first race. In case you can't see me, there I am right there in the front row. Now, unlike like many people, I listened to music while I was doing my 5K. Unlike most people, with my DJ background, I was able to weave the music together such that one song seamlessly flowed in through the other and hit the right tempo of the song at the right time for me, so that when I was getting tired, I had the right song come on and help propel me through to the finish line. Honestly, this is how I felt crossing the finish line of my first 5K. From being that chubby kid to leading an unhealthy lifestyle as a DJ, it felt amazing to cross the finish line. I owed it all to having the right song at the right time, at the right tempo for me. And so I created a company called Rock My World, Smart Music for Fitness and Wellness. And so I use this as an example of a story from my own personal background for why I created this company that hopefully was somewhat entertaining, maybe hooked you a little bit in the beginning, hopefully made you smile, but also explained why I was pitching my particular company. I have two other examples for you guys from companies I've coached about how they weaved stories into their pitches and were successful. So this is Jimmy Davidson. He was a member of one of our Founders First boot camps, and Jimmy runs a small franchise of gyms, of parkour gyms. Now, if anybody is familiar with parkour, it's kind of like you run along walls and jump over things in the course of getting from point A to point B. And so Jimmy has a great business. He's been successful opening gyms. He's he's got revenue. He's got customer retention. He knows how to acquire his customers. And so when we were talking about how to win a pitch competition, I said, Jimmy, you've got all the foundation there of your business. You need a hook. And so what I suggested he do, and he did go on to win the competition, was come out on stage for the competition and do a parkour move. So he comes out, and this is a reenactment. This wasn't actually him doing a crazy parkour move, which, was very in line with his brand of what he does, and helped to grab attention in the room from the other 15 presenters who were there talking about their business. And so, this is a great way to set the hook, to be memorable, to be relevant for his particular company, and definitely went a long way to helping him be successful. Another example of how to do this, grab and hold attention, is to pull on the heartstrings, right? So being funny is one way to do it. Being on brand and on point, and doing something unique, in Jimmy's case, doing parkour, is one way to do it. But I'd like to introduce you to Leon Wu. Now, Leon is runs a company called Sharp Suiting that is all about suits for members of the LGBTQ community. And he tells this story of how he went wedding shopping with a friend to a suit store, and because of his friend's nature of being in this community, they just didn't have anything that was appropriate for his friend. And it's a really heart-wrenching story to know that there's just not clothing out there that's suited for you and your needs. And it really ended up hooking the audience in a pitch competition, and really ended up exemplifying the problem that he's trying to solve. And so, pulling on the heartstrings, telling a story that is, sad but ends up being uplifting, is also another great way to grab and hold attention. So that's tip number one for you guys. And I spent a lot of time on this one because I feel like this is a really critical area for you. The next ones we'll go through a little bit quicker, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So tip number two, simplify what you do and how you explain the solution that you're providing for the problem you're trying to solve. Now listen, I've been there. I get it. You love what you do, and your business is complex. I understand. You do all these things. You have all these different service offerings and customer segments and all these things you'd love to do. It's a bit of the curse of being the entrepreneur that we love to not only talk about the thing that we've created or the service that we delivered, but also that we do it in a bunch of different ways. We want you to know all of it. I'm telling you right now, in a pitch, you've got to simplify this down. You've got to really get to the core of it, hit those high notes, and then move on. You have a limited amount of time in which to communicate how your business works. And yes, your solution is a part of that. You have to talk about the problem that you're solving, but you have many other areas of your business to discuss. You have to talk about your traction, your market opportunity, your competition, what your ask is, what your financials are. You can't spend the bulk of the time talking about your solution. Otherwise, A, you'll come off as the entrepreneur who just loves the solution and doesn't talk about the business. And B, you'll just run out of time to talk about those other things. So this is a mistake I see so many founders and entrepreneurs make. They spend a lot of time talking about their solution and not enough time talking about their business model, how they acquire customers, all the other important aspects of their actual business. So let me show you an example of this from a company I coached in boot camp. This was from this was a slide from one of the participants in our boot camp that I was coaching, and she was explaining how her service offering just covers so many different bases. They do a bunch of different things, right? They help people with their physical fitness, their mental fitness, interpersonal, financial, nutritional, social. They do all the, I mean, look, there's a lot going on, and imagine this kind of full screen in a slide. We said, look, we got to simplify this down. I mean, it's great that you do all these things, but simplify it so you can move on to talking about other parts of your business. So we got it down to 6 bullet points, and just bam, 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 hit the high notes, talk about what you do. Here's the things, here's some of the results from it. It gets the point across and enough detail to say, okay, see how that's different. But then it gives you opportunity to move on to talk about other elements of your business. So that's point number 2 here. Simplify how you discuss what you do. Point number 3, nail your traction. Traction is the substance to any great pitch. And it's also the hardest thing to really, you can't really fake it, right? Like you can tell a story about the company you started, the passion. You can communicate the passion that you feel. You can be funny. All that stuff is important. But traction is how you're actually operating and executing the business and the success you've had doing that. And so it really does form the substance and the foundation. Invariably, if you're pitching some form of equity investor, at some point, somebody's going to come to you and say, come back to me when you have more traction. It's kind of a moving goalpost in a sense, but it still is something that you have to be able to communicate because it shows that you know how to drive your business forward. So let's talk about some of examples of traction. Now, the classic one, of course, is sales. Like if you're out there and you're generating revenue and it's growing month over month, year over year, and you can show the graph that goes up and to the right, that's of course a great form of traction. That's not the only form of traction, but that is a solid one. Retention can also be a great form of traction. So if your customers are sticking with you for an extended period of time, demonstrating that, showing the data around that, is a really valuable form of traction. What you're saying is that people love what we do. And you don't just say that, you have the data there to prove it with your retention numbers. NPS, these are kind of in declining order of value. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable. It just, sales are going to be what trumps everything. But, in the middle of the pack here, NPS, it means that people are recommending you to other people, or they say that they are, right? You can compare NPS numbers across others in your industry. If you just, kind of Google NPS scores within your industry, you can see how you can compare. And so it's a great indicator that the market is appreciating the service or product that you're offering. Testimonials are always great. So actual feedback from customers that resonate that reinforce the value proposition that you're offering. Those can be valuable forms of traction. And even if you are super early on with what you're doing, even just having survey responses like, hey, we're early with this, we have this idea, we think we have some, we think there's an opportunity here, we've surveyed this audience and they said that they would like it if we delivered this. Even that is a form of traction that you can share and deliver in a presentation. It's not as good as sales, of course, but it shows that at least there's kind of market validation for what it is that that you're looking to deliver. I see Michael in the chat there says, if you're hearing it correctly, traction is about the success of your operational processes. I wouldn't say operational processes, I would just say of your business, right? So sales is a function of driving revenue, and that's success related to that. Retention, yes, somewhat operational processes, but also your ability to attract customers in your target market. Retention is a measure of that, right? Because if you attract the right type of customers, you deliver them the service that solves their problem, they'll presumably be retained either because they have a subscription or because they return to purchase. So I think it's more than just operational process, but certainly that is a component here. All right, moving along. Tip number 4, remember the purpose of your pitch. Now, I will confess here, I'm going to use an analogy I don't have a ton of experience with lately because I've been married for 12 years now. So I have not had to get the next date in a while. But when it comes to pitching, it's important that you realize that's the purpose of your pitch. I've seen so many entrepreneurs who are like, think that the pitch is going to, somebody's just going to sit there for however long that pitch is, and at the end of it, just be so blown away that they're going to write a check or sign up to be your advisor or agree to partner with you. Keep in mind that the purpose of your pitch is just to get the next meeting, where it's a less formal type of interaction, where you're not doing slides and walking through things and going through that, where you're actually having a deeper conversation about the nature of your business. So the purpose of your pitch, it's really important to keep in mind, is to get the next date, get the next meeting, progress through the process, the sales cycle, if you will, for whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Don't try to close the deal directly from your pitch. You're going to end up trying to reveal too much information, go into too much detail. You risk boring or losing your audience. So really keep in mind what the purpose is here, and that is to get that next meeting. To do that, like you might in a date, put your best foot forward. You don't need to kind of share all the things that are going on with the company, all the things that may not be quite right, all the things that, skeletons in the closet. Look, this is the pitch. Put the best foot forward. Leave somebody walking away with the pitch saying, wow, that was amazing. I really want to learn more. I will follow up with them to get really into the details. That should be your goal when you're pitching. There will be plenty of time for due diligence, and whether it's an investor or a partner or an advisor, they'll get into the details. The pitch is not the time to do that. So let me show you an example of a pitch that came through for us of something I would recommend not to do. So this company was sharing their financial history in their pitch. And you can see here that in 2018, they had 11K in revenue. 2019, they had 0. 2020, they had 15K, and then growth. Don't do this. You're telling a story here, right? You're not revealing every detail about your business. This just creates a red flag at a time at which you're trying to put your best foot forward. This information is not necessary at this point. Now, when somebody comes and says, okay, I'm really excited about what you do, I want to get into the details of your model and your financial history, okay, then of course you need to talk about this. At the time of pitch, all that does is make somebody go, wait, what happened there? And now they're not paying attention to how awesome you are, how awesome your service is, how awesome your growth prospects are. They're wondering, well, what happened there? So just, think about how that's presented versus just something like this. Two different, they're both true, just two different stories. And this one, I would argue, would lead more likely to getting that next date than this one, which is like, that seems strange. So just an example of putting your best foot forward. Tip number 5, the last tip, we're talking about practice. Does anybody remember this? I feel like I aged myself when I put this Allen Iverson quote. Anybody thumbs up in the chat who remembers Allen Iverson's thing talking about practice? No, am I the only one? Michael, I appreciate, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Somebody else out there remembers this. We're talking about practice. Yes, practice. Talking about practice. Look, folks, pitching is hard. It makes everybody nervous. Even people that don't seem nervous, I promise you, they are nervous or they were nervous at some point. If you've ever pitched, you know what I'm talking about. You get nervous. How do you get over being nervous? You become confident, right? Like when you're confident, you're much less nervous about whatever it is you're about to talk about, whatever it is you're about to go through. So how do you become confident? It comes from practice. So let me take you through my process when pitching. Now, I will say that this is my process. It works for me. It's been successful for me. I know other people that don't follow this process and they're still very successful too. But I'll just share mine and take from it what you will. So the first thing I do if I'm going to have a pitch is I'm going to write out the whole pitch. I'm going to write it out. I'm literally type it out. For, again, those that don't know, that's a typewriter there. That's what you used to use. I'm not that old, just to be clear, but it's an icon. Anyways, you write out your whole pitch so that you get all your thoughts out of your head and onto paper. And then you of course edit it and cut it back and make sure that you're hitting the high notes, that you're being simple, that you've got your story, that you're nailing your traction, and then you memorize it. And memorize it because that will give you the confidence in delivering it. Now, when I do this, I will practice in front of a mirror. I'll write out the pitch, I'll memorize it, and then I'll talk to a mirror about my pitch. And of course, I'll have slides there, but I then no longer need the slides. The slides are there to back up what I'm saying, but really the message I'm delivering, I can do just in front of a mirror. I'll practice with someone else so I can get some feedback from them like, hey, did this make sense? Did that make sense? When I'm coaching companies in boot camp, we'll go through a practice session before the pitch competition so they can get actual feedback on what they're about to say and places to cut back or add to it, or is something resonate, that kind of thing. And my special hack, just kind of next level stuff, do it while driving. Now you may think to yourself, like, why driving? Like that, you've just done it in front of a mirror, you've done it with something else. What happens when you're driving? There are distractions. And I've been in pitches where the projector goes down, where there's so much rain outside, it's hitting the window and it's making it extremely loud, where somebody gets in a coughing fit. Like, if you're not prepared for distractions, you can get very easily thrown off in the course of your pitch. And you will be much more confident in delivering it if you've done it in an environment that has some distraction. So I love to do this. I will get in the car once I've gone through these steps, start driving, and if somebody saw me, they'd probably think I'm looking a little weird, but here I am driving and I'm just like talking and delivering my pitch and working on my cadence and making sure that I can still deliver it even when there's other distracting things going on. Last little tip here, something that I shared. This was for a particularly memorable pitch that I had. I spent about 6.5 years at Qualcomm, a Fortune 200 technology company here in San Diego. makes chips that go in all the smartphones and cars and all sorts of stuff. And I had an opportunity while I was there to pitch the C-suite on an internal business idea. So something that had kind of worked its way up through the chains that we were hoping that the executives would fund. And in this room are billionaires, right? Like these are folks with a whole lot of money. And so I knew I was going to be nervous. And so what I did, I was like, what will it feel like to look at these, billionaires sitting around this table and like tell them this idea? And so what I did is I went on LinkedIn, I copied their pictures, I printed them out, and I just posted them on the wall in my office and practiced looking at them and delivering the pitch. So that when I got into the boardroom, and there's all these super high net worth people and I'm looking them in the eye, I'd already done that by looking at their picture on the wall. So that was just a tactic, a technique that I found was really helpful there. So this brings me towards the tail end of this particular webinar. I wanted to ensure that I left some time for Q&A. Now, this is just 5 tips as it relates to pitching. There's a whole lot more here. Some of you may have questions about, okay, well, what do I include in my investor deck? Very good questions, stuff that we can either hit in the Q&A or potentially have a follow-on session for. How to speak confidently, how to pace your speaking for maximum effectiveness, how to structure your ask such that it makes sense, signals that your pitch is landing or not, how to read your audience, all sorts of things. So this is just a little bit of an intro into pitching. Hopefully these 5 tips have been helpful. And I think we have maybe 7 minutes or so for Q&A before we wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. If you want, we can go ahead and start. I do have a couple questions that I'm looking at right now.
Sure.
Let's start out with this one. We did experience a bad year during COVID. Do you recommend adding that into your pitch deck or discussing it during your pitch?
That's a good question. I think it all depends on what's happened since then, right? So, in that example that I showed there, the company, had this dip in revenue and then, came back up out of it. And in that case, that was 4 or 5 years ago. So in that type of situation, I'd say, no, what happened 4 or 5 years ago isn't particularly material to where you're headed now. If your dip was, in 2021 or 2022, and then it's come back up, I mean, I do think that you have to have it in there, but I would gloss over it and focus more on what's happened since, which hopefully is a rebound from that, right? And it also presents an opportunity for you to potentially weave that into your story, to talk about resiliency and the ability to bounce back and overcome adversity, right? So, a dip in performance for your company isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can really be part of your story. So, I think it, like most answers, it depends, but it shouldn't just be, it doesn't have to just be a negative thing. You can flip that around to a positive thing in the right story.
Love that. We actually got some some questions in the chat right now. If you want, we could go with this one. What might you notice in your research of a company that might guide you in a different approach? An example as being more emotional storytelling versus hard drive on financials, or do you recommend keeping the same pitch regardless of the company you were pitching?
I think that's there's a couple different answers to that. One, the more established the company, the longer it's been around, the more the hard financials are going to play a role, right? So, let's just say, if you're pitching like a late stage company who's been in business for a while, and you just have really strong financials, then you can just focus on that, and the emotional piece is less important, because whoever you're talking to is likely basing whatever decision they may have, it's assuming it's in some form of investment decision, on those financials. If it's earlier stage, if there's not as much kind of history there from a financial, or if it's not somebody who's looking at making a financial investment, then the emotional aspect is where I would focus. So I think it really depends on understanding what's important to your audience. And look, I mean, the emotional aspect isn't just there for attention's sake. People also want to feel a part of something. Simon Sinek's video, if you've never checked it out, the TED Talk on people don't buy what you do, they buy why you're doing it, is really valuable. And so it's more than just holding attention. People, whether they're partners or investors or employees, want to feel a part of something. And so your emotional message helps them to understand that by working with you in some capacity, they'll be joining a part of something, a part of a movement. So it's really kind of dependent on your audience in that situation.
Great. And I think we could probably take these last two questions in the chat. I'll start with Tracy's of what's the best way to find out about pitch competitions that are more product focused rather than service focused?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Aside from kind of just your basic kind of Google searching for them, I would say look at accelerators or startup incubators that are in your particular region. So Tracy, where are you based? It may just be Arlington. I don't know if that's just your last name or where you're from. San Diego, perfect. So that one I can actually speak more directly to, given that I'm in San Diego as well. So look towards angel groups. So Tech Coast Angels has a competition. Hera Hub has a competition. Connect often has competition. So, I would say looking at companies that really kind of target the startup ecosystem. Companies like WeWork often will share competitions that are coming up. So I would say look at the organizations that are around the ecosystem. Startup San Diego, of course, has an annual competition. A lot of the universities do, which they sometimes open up to folks who are outside the university. So really look at different companies that target startups. Even law firms can be great sources of information about potential competitions. So you say you're a service. So you mean that's as opposed to kind of a tech-based company? It's yeah, I would say that there are kind of fewer of those. Certainly, at Founders, not to pimp what we do at Founders First, but that's what we target are typically service-based companies. In all honesty, there do tend to be fewer of those, just because services tend to struggle to get kind of angel and VC investment because of scalability reasons. But I would still say, looking within the startup ecosystem can be a good way to try and find some of those.
Awesome. And last but not least, we'll go with Monica's question of how far is too extreme in forecasting your numbers for the current year?
How far is too extreme in forecasting your numbers? Well, you don't want to. I'm not sure what you mean by extreme, but you don't want to lie, right? Like you don't want to be like, okay, well, last year we did 500K and then this year we're going to do 20 million. Like that's going to be something hard to back up. I think more of the question is like when you're forecasting, you have assumptions like 400K to 2 million. So that's not too extreme, but you do need to be able to back up your assumptions that lead you there. Now, whatever the forecast is, it's going to be wrong. Everybody knows that. But what's important and what forecasts do is tell you two things. One, they show you what the entrepreneur, the business, or the founder thinks the business can be within a certain time frame, right? So not just for the current year, but where the business is going. But two, it gives the opportunity to put forth your assumptions that lead to that number. So if you're going from 400K to 2 million, okay, great. You have my attention. They must be doing something amazing. Tell me how you're going to do that. And if your answer is, well, we're growing by word of mouth, then I'm going to be like, I'm not buying that. But if you tell me, we have a 3-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio, we have this return on our ad spend, we just signed this particular contract, we're getting this, many new customers on a regular basis, we're bringing on these salespeople, and all those are the reasons we're going to get to 2 million. Well, then it's not extreme at all because your assumptions are very, very solid. So I wouldn't say it's so much about the extreme of the forecast as much as it is how solid are the assumptions that go into your forecast that make it believable.
Awesome. Well, that is the end of all the questions. We appreciate you for all joining, but we will be sending this out as in an email with the link to this webinar. But yeah, thank you so much, Adam. Thank you everyone else for joining.
And real quick, if I could just add, have one ask at the end of my pitch. If you're on Twitter, give me a follow. I talk a lot there about everything startup and founder related. On LinkedIn, please feel free to send me an invite. Would love to connect with you guys there. That is my only ask if you found this valuable. If you didn't find this valuable, please let me know that as well, because I'm always looking on how to get better. So that is my ask.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.